get to school, there's a bunch of people from HR in our building, in the library, and they have these folders laid out for us and ready to hand to the staff. What's up, you guys? My name is Regina, and I want to welcome you to the Faithful Teacher. Thank you so much for being here today. I am going to be sharing with you my personal story about how my district had to close schools, one of which was the school that I was teaching at. So if you maybe have an impending school closing coming up and you want to know what to possibly be ready to experience, or you just want to know what really happens when a school district has to close schools, you're in the right place, because I'm going to share everything with you from the day we found out all the way until the last day of school. So you're going to get the whole story. All right, so let's hop right into it. This happened in the 2023-2024 school year. In the school district where I was teaching, we start in early August. So in early August, school starting, teachers go back, get ready for all of our professional development days before the kids get here. We had no idea that that would be our last first day of school. It's kind of sad when you think about it. We had no clue that this was coming. Nobody did. Well, none of the teachers did. School starts, everything's great. I was pregnant at the time. I think I was around 30 weeks pregnant, so started the school year. I had my baby on September 5th, so I went on my maternity leave. Everything was great when I left. We had a really tumultuous school year because on top of the school closing, our principal was unfortunately having some health issues. And when I went on maternity leave, she was there. When I came back, she was gone, like indefinitely, because of some of the health stuff that she had going on. So I came back to work right after Thanksgiving break, and I came back to no principal. So what we had to do is how it's structured in our school, and I was at the elementary school level. So how they have it structured is you have your principals, and then if your school's population is high enough, I'm not sure what the threshold is, you do get assigned an assistant. And then the next in the hierarchy would be the instructional coach, and then you have the teachers. So where I was teaching, we did not have enough students to have an assistant principal. So we've always just had a principal. And so our instructional coach was next in the hierarchy. So what they had to do, or what happened, is our instructional coach ended up stepping up into the principal role, which actually worked out really well because he had just finished his administrative degree and got his credentials and everything, and was already thinking about transitioning to administration. So ended up working out. Poor guy had to do the job of the principal and the instructional coach, really. And I mean, he had to do everything, like budget, discipline referrals, like everything, dealing with staff, the whole nine. So our hats were definitely off to him, and he did a fantastic job. So when I came back from maternity leave, my principal was out, instructional coach was acting as principal, and as a staff, we're just trying to corral and support each other and help out where needed, and just really get through this time of our principal unfortunately having to be out. So holiday break, Christmas break came. We all went on Christmas break, had a great time with our families. Again, at this time, we still have no clue that this is coming. We have no clue. So we go on Christmas break. We come back in January. And then in January is when we started hearing some of this buzz around school closures. So what happened is that our district was in some major financial trouble. Our district was in $42 million of debt. And so the higher ups had to come up with a plan to mitigate this $42 million deficit. So they laid out 3 phases. The first phase was some elimination of jobs, a little bit higher up jobs at the district level. A lot of that we didn't really hear about or know about because it didn't really affect us on the teacher level. So I don't know everything that happened in phase 1, but I know some jobs were eliminated. and some programs were cut. So you might be wondering, well, why was your district in a $42 million deficit? Great question. What I do know about that is part of it was deferred maintenance on buildings. And another piece of that was the decrease in enrollment. So decrease in enrollment means a decrease in state funding. And the other piece of that, and there is probably more, but these are the three parts that I remember. The other piece of it was ESSER funds. So during COVID, we were given relief funds to fill certain positions and things like that. And then once those funds ran out, what are you going to do? How are you going to fill these positions and all that kind of stuff? So those are the three parts that I'm aware of. In January, we started hearing some buzz about the district possibly closing schools through this second phase, through phase 2. Again, we didn't know what that was going to look like. We didn't even know what schools were going to be closing. So January 22nd, the Board of Education held a meeting, and at this meeting, they announced the schools that could possibly close. So I can't remember exactly how many schools were listed, but there is a pretty good sized list of schools that could possibly be closed. So how did they decide which schools were going to be closed? Let me tell you. At the elementary school level, they had criteria for which schools could be closed based on these things. So for elementary school, number one, if you had a school population of 350 students or less, if your school had an FCI score of 0.7, so FCI is basically, that is the Facilities Condition Index, which basically in layman's terms means what is the condition of your building? Is it in bad shape or is it in good shape? The higher that number, the worse condition your school is in. So if your school had an FCI of 0.7 or higher, you could also be on the chopping block. And there was some sort of out-of-state committee that came in and like evaluated our district and our schools and all of this stuff. The other thing is if your school had enrollment declines greater than 20% since 2016, 2017, if your school is a magnet school that is a duplicate, so in our district we have like magnet schools like traditional magnet or like aerospace engineering magnet, dual language magnet. So if your school is an aerospace engineering magnet and there's another aerospace engineering magnet and you also have some other factors, then you could close. Pure magnet options to achieve savings without major boundary shifts. I'm not really sure what that means. And then minimal staff additions based on proposed closure action. Minimal staff additions. I'm not sure what that means either. And another one says review all other data for context. So basically the big ones for us is like if your school is small, like under 350, that number for the state of your building, the shape that your building is in, and declines in enrollment were kind of the major things that we were looking at for our building, because my school is not a magnet school. For elementary school, those are basically the criteria that they were looking at. So January 22nd, they made an announcement of a list of schools that could possibly be closed. So at that time, we were made aware that our school could maybe be on the chopping block. At that time, as a staff, you know, we would kind of talk amongst ourselves about like, do you think they're going to close the school? A lot of us felt that they would not, mainly because our enrollment had gone up drastically over the course of the school year. Our school was one of the locations for what we call our newcomer program, which is basically any student who's come directly from another country and does not have English as their first language. They will be placed in a newcomer program where they could get like the nuts and bolts of the English language to get them ready to function academically in the classroom. So I think we had either 4 or 6 elementary schools in our district. And our district, we're a very, very big district. Wichita Public Schools is the school district. And I'm pretty sure we had 53 schools in the district. Let me see. Hold on one second. It says 88 schools. I didn't think we had that many schools in the district. Okay, so the 88 is right, but we had 54 of those were elementary schools. Okay, so pretty big district. So out of the 54 elementary schools, I think only 4 or 6 had newcomer locations. So because we were a newcomer location, which was a specialized program, and because we were getting an influx of newcomer students this year of immigrants and migrant students, we actually had to open 2 more newcomer classrooms in our school. So we were like, they're probably not going to close us because we're getting a large influx of students. It's important for the newcomer students when they get here that they have some sort of stability. So it really kind of rocked their world to have to move these students around. And our families at our school were also, a lot of them had really high needs. So they relied really heavily on like our social worker to really help be liaison for them with different services in the city and all kinds of stuff. So our school was not just a place of academics. It was really a place of support for the families. So for that reason, we really felt like the school district was not going to shut us down. But then at the same time, we were like, well, maybe they might, because we had some of the high factors. So let me tell you what factors we had at my school. At my school, the worst for us was the shape of our building. Our maintenance score, that FCI number that I told you, if it was at 0.7 or higher, you were being flagged. Ours was 0.95. So we were almost at the top of buildings being in the worst shape. And to my understanding, it was our HVAC system that needed to be replaced, is what I kind of heard. I mean, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure, I think that's what the major issue was, because it's not like the roof was falling in, or we were like, when it was raining, we had to put buckets because there was leaks or anything like that. Like nothing like that. Like the building was solid, but I'm pretty sure it was just the HVAC needing to be replaced that was major. Okay, so criteria for the school's closings. Okay, so my school, we had a high FCI score. At the time that they had the committee come in and do the analysis, our student population was less than 350. However, at the time that this came out, we were up into the 400s because of the influx of the immigrant and migrant students. So our population was above the 350 by the time this actually came out, but less than the 350 at the time they did the analysis. So that was another reason why people were like, maybe they won't close us. Okay, the other red flag that they had at my school was that we had no secure entry. So basically, what they had been doing over the course of the last few years is remodeling the entryway of the school to make it safer. So ours did get upgraded because I was working at that school for 16 years. So when I got there, I can't remember exactly what it was like, but when they remodeled, we did get the buzzer and the cameras, and then our exterior doors were locked, and we did have, I don't know, maybe a like 10 to 12 foot breezeway, and then another set of doors that are locked, and then you enter the school. So the door to get into the office though was in that breezeway, and that door would just be open. So apparently that was not upgraded to the top level of expectation that they wanted. So that was another thing. And actually they had scheduled our school to have our secure entry done. We were supposed to get it done in December, and they kept pushing it back. And so we were kind of like, why do they keep pushing it back? But we figured out why, because they were closing our school. So The next thing is that our school had $11 million in deferred maintenance. Again, I think a lot of that is the HVAC system. And we did not have a dedicated cafeteria. Our gym and cafeteria were all in the same space. We had like a multi-purpose room that was actually also a FEMA shelter, which if you live in the Midwest, you need to have a safe shelter for tornadoes. So we did have a FEMA shelter in our school, which has, I think, the 11-foot concrete walls all the way around. And that was our gym and our cafeteria. So I guess we were dinged because we didn't have a separate gym and cafeteria, which is what they would have liked to kind of, I guess they're looking to kind of raise the bar on the facilities as a whole in the district. And so they would like for all schools to have a dedicated cafeteria and gym and not the combined space for both. So those are basically the red flags for my school. So, okay, so January 22nd, the school district announced the possible closures. So, you know, everybody's talking. Whose school gonna close? Maybe this school, maybe that school, blah, 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 blah. So February 12th is the day that the board meeting set up, the day that the school board set up the official meeting to announce the schools that would officially be closed. So February 12th came. It was a Monday. I'm pretty sure it was a Monday night. So, you know, we're all kind of nervous, waiting for this board meeting to start. They film the board meeting, so everybody's watching. And right at 6 o'clock, I turned on the board meeting and I start watching. And then one of my friends that worked with me, she sent me a message, and she's like, "Hey, check your email." So I'm like, check my email. So she sent me a little screenshot of this email. And so the email basically told us, your school is closing. So, and the email was sent out right at 6 o'clock. So the board meeting started at 6 o'clock. And then we also received an email right at 6 letting us know, like, your school is closing and all this other information. So I didn't even read through the whole email. I just saw the first part with the school closing and I'm like, oh my goodness. So everybody in the school district that was at a closing school received this email at 6 o'clock, right when the board meeting was starting. So you go through the board meeting, there was a bunch of stuff on the agenda, then they finally get to the school closures and they make that announcement. And there's 6 schools that they're closing, 4 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. So we hear our school being announced and it was kind of a weird moment because it's like, we thought that it could maybe happen, but at the end of the day, nobody wants their school to close. So we were all hoping that they wouldn't close because who wants to go through a school closure? Because it doesn't just affect the teachers. It affects the students, their families. It affects your whole community that you've built as a little family. And it's like, you're just kind of being ripped apart. So it was a whole lot. So anyway, February 12th is when the district made the announcement of the schools they were closing. So after that, the next day at 8 o'clock, we had a meeting with representatives from the our HR department. So school starts for us at 9 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock, they had this meeting. I missed the meeting. Apparently it was in the email, but I didn't even read through the whole email because there was a lot of stuff in the email. So I missed the HR meeting, but let me tell you, let me just slow down. Let me slow down. So there is a meeting with the HR the next day. So we get to school. There's a bunch of people from HR in our building, in the library, and they have these folders laid out for us and ready to hand to the staff. Now, let me tell you, the February 12th meeting was just to announce the schools that they were wanting to close, but the actual solidifying of the list of schools to be closed could not happen unless the board voted on it to approve it. So the February 12th was an announcement that these are the schools we want to close, but it's contingent upon the board approving and voting yes on the closures on March 4th. So the schools are not officially closed, but yet we're getting these little folders with all this information. I'm going to tell you what was inside of this folder. So, the HR staff stayed in our building for the next like 2 to 3 days to be readily available to answer any questions that people had, or people that were absent the day that they came. You could set up a one-on-one meeting with them and they could give you all the information. So I had my little one-on-one meeting. I got my folder. So let me tell you what's in this folder. So basically what's in here, and our names were all in the front of these folders. These folders were ready. So the first thing in here is this letter right here. So this letter, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but it basically says that on February 12th, the board made a difficult decision to close schools. As a result, we regret to inform you that your current position at Park Elementary will be eliminated for the 2024-25 school year, subject to board approval. And it goes through them saying it's their mission to make sure that we find jobs, that they relocate us, and nobody's going to be losing their position. You will get a position, and there's some steps that they list here to go through. So the schools are not closed yet because they have to vote on it on March 5th, but here's your letter telling you that you don't have a job anymore. Right, crazy. So also in here is there's like a QR code for you to fill out a survey to kind of indicate what your interests were, like what grade levels, what schools you were interested in working in. There's this little flow chart that talks about like, what do I do now that the school's closing? There's some FAQs in here, as well as each of us was appointed an HR person as our point of contact, and that person was kind of like our liaison to help us find another job in the building. So they would like email if there's specific jobs that would be pertinent to what you're looking for. If you had specific questions, you could email this person. So all of us were given an HR contact person that we could directly communicate with. And then also in here is just a list of the schools in the school district and kind of their location. So it's like you're at home, you hear that your school is closing, and then the next morning, here you go. You don't have a job anymore. So it was emotional. Like a lot of people were, crying and upset, all of that. The parents, there was a lot of upset parents. There was a lot of parents like crying the next morning, and like there were so many different emotions. And then we're at the elementary school level, so you have to explain this to 5-year-olds, to 6-year-olds. The older kids kind of could understand more, but the younger ones didn't really know what was going on or what was happening or why. So that was very challenging as well. So over the course of the next couple weeks, nobody got fired, so you were guaranteed a position. Everybody, the office staff, janitorial staff, teachers, everybody, you were guaranteed a position, but you were not necessarily guaranteed a position at your same level. So like, for example, the janitorial services have different levels, like an entry level or like a supervisor or different things like that. And I'm not familiar with all of it. So basically you're guaranteed a job, but you're not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to be like at the same level. But they did say that if you got into a position that was a lesser role than you were currently at, you would get the same pay for the following school year. And then after that, if you're still in that lesser role, your pay would decrease, is my understanding. So everybody's guaranteed jobs. How was the job process? Did we get placed in a new school? How was that process? That process was very frustrating for a lot of people. So here's how it worked. You did your survey to say like what job position you were interested in, what area of town you want to be in, etc. But you had to do your resume, go on this they had a closed place on the internet where they had job postings that were not open to the public and were not open to other teachers in the district either. So only teachers at closed schools had access to these jobs. So you had to go in there and apply for the jobs. Like, you're brand new to the district. Do your resume. I had some teachers at my school that have been teaching there for the last 25, 29 years, and they had to go revamp their resume, turn in their resume, and go on interviews. So you had to go on interviews, wait for that phone call, wait for that email to see if you got hired or not. So it was very stressful for a lot of people. I definitely feel like the whole process of finding a new job, they could have made it a little bit easier. They also had 2 job fairs exclusive to teachers at closing schools. I did not go to the job fairs, but what I did hear is that there was a whole bunch of people, but not a lot of principals available at the job fairs, and like people standing in long lines waiting to sit down and talk to principals about potential jobs. So the consensus I got is that the process was a little bit stressful, especially when you had certain schools on your radar that you really wanted to be at, for whatever reason. Maybe it's location, maybe it's the clientele of kids. I know like we had a high Spanish population in our schools. There's a lot of teachers who are bilingual that wanted to teach in a school where they could use their dual language. And so, you gotta look for schools that have the clientele that you're looking for, so you can use your gifts and use your talents. And so, going on an interview and then waiting to hear back, and then getting an email that you didn't get a job, but it was a job you wanted, or getting offered a job that you're like, oh, I don't really know if I want that job. It's not on my top of my list. But I did interview at another place, but they're not announcing if they've filled the position until another 2 weeks. So do I accept this job that I don't really want? And then what if I get that job? And so what happened is, once you accepted a position, the district would not let you switch to another position, even if you explained to them like, this is my preference to be over here, and I just accepted this place because of the situation. They're like, nope, you can't switch. So it was a little bit stressful. But everybody was guaranteed a position, and they were also giving a retention bonus of, is that on here? I don't think that's on here. I believe it was $2,400 that you were getting if you stayed in the school district. They were giving a $2,400 retention bonus that was split amongst 2 payments. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, people are applying for jobs and all that. And then we're also dealing with our principal not being there, and just heard she was trying to come back, and then had some other things going on with her health, and just ended up not being able to come back. So that was kind of disheartening for us as well. So we were dealing with that, and then also trying to figure out, okay, like, what happens to our building? What do I do with all my stuff, right? So that was a whole nother situation. So basically, what we had to do was take an inventory of our classrooms. And so anything in there that was a personal belonging that you paid for, you were to indicate that on a list, so that the powers that be, when they came through our buildings, they could go into our classrooms and see what furniture was going to be available to disperse to other schools. The thing the district was doing, since they were going to be closing schools, was they had to reconfigure the boundaries. So they also announced what schools the current students at a closing school would be going to in the event that the school closed. So it was stressful for a lot of the parents. The school where I taught is one of the oldest schools in the district. I think we're actually the oldest established school. We were established in 1885. And then the building that we are currently in, we were in there since I believe 1921 was when that school was built. But the school itself was established in 1885. So the oldest established school in the district, and the building we were in was there since 1921. And we had been remodeled, and we had some additions added onto the building since it was built. But our school was definitely a place of family and like legacy, because you have there's one of the pairs at my school. She went to the school, and her kids went to the school, and like her siblings, so like parents that had a teacher, and then their children having that same teacher, like just such a long thread of community and generations throughout the school. So it was very heartbreaking for a lot of the families. And like I said, our school was definitely a place of stability for the community. A lot of the families relied on a lot of the resources that our wonderful social worker was able to direct them to, and just provided a lot of support for families. We had a lot of families that were in a low economic status, and so just sometimes they just the basics they would come to school for, like clothing and even just like wash their clothes. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So it was really hard on the community as well. Okay, so this video is getting kind of long. I think I'm gonna have to do a part 2 and tell you guys the rest of everything that happened. So stay tuned for part 2. I hope you've enjoyed this so far, and I'll see you in the next video.